So our question for you is, the tobacco industry is trying to portray themselves as eco-friendly, as Rachel Rose pointed out. So they've launched all of these cleanup campaigns. They're shifting the responsibility onto the tobacco user there, right? So do you have any recommendations of how this can be countered through policy measure?
Yes, and actually we'll challenge us a little bit, especially after hearing some of the previous speakers, including Adriana Blanco, our colleagues from UNDP and others. As you point out, the industry is trying to use a lot of those cleanup campaigns to just portray themselves as part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And they use it often as marketing campaigns, and that's quite problematic. And we need to also remember that tobacco is a quite unique product. It's not like, for example, in the context like, cigarette, some plastics that could be recycled, or bottles like glass bottles, for example, can be used. That's not the case for cigarettes. And a point has been made. So first, a clear policy that we need to be careful in the context of at country level when we implement those campaigns is to ensure that the tobacco industry is not involved in any way. For example, in France, in Spain, we see them, they try to become formal partners in that process. And that has been problematic because then they propose solutions that just do not work. And again, they use it as a marketing purpose. It happened in France, for example, in the creation of, under the single-use plastic, for example, directive and the implementation of a program in France. They created an eco group, basically, which basically was totally influenced by the industry. So this is where my challenge comes to you, to all of you in the audience, is what do we need to do? What could we do? And actually, a number of products are being phased out, or some jurisdictions are considering phasing out some dangerous products out of the market. So we see it with plastics, and a number of jurisdictions, for example, will ban plastics and single-use plastic. Australia will do it starting in 23, and a number of jurisdictions are doing it already. But that's just for plastic bags, straws, and so on. So those type of products. So first, given that we know that cigarette butts, cigarette filters absolutely don't protect health. Actually, they could increase the risk of adenocarcinoma. Why not phase them out? That would make sense. And particularly in the context of the extended political responsibility principle, which is one of them is to demand that companies, that corporations make their products safer for the environment. So removing filters could be a solution. But then also, what not in the context of some of the global goals that we have, in addition to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the EU Cancer Plan, for example, we wish to reach a 5% or below smoking prevalence. New Zealand, for example, same. Why not phase out cigarettes and some tobacco products out of the market? And it's something that's been considered and has been done in some jurisdictions. California and Beverly Hills, for example, has phased out the sale of tobacco products. And I know this sounds absolutely crazy, but it does align with the FCTC, the WHO FCTC, Article 2.1 of the FCTC, which calls on countries to go beyond the current articles in the FCTC to protect health. But remember that even, for example, smoke-free policies in the early 2000s, that was considered extremely radical. I was involved in the FCTC negotiations from 2000 to 2003. And I remember even civil society thought it was too radical to call for smoke-free environments. But then it became the most popular topic. I was included in the FCTC under Article 8 of the treaty, and then become one of the most popular measures in the FCTC after it entered into force. And politicians told us very quickly when they were told about it, what do you think about this now? And they said, we wish we had done it sooner. So why not thinking about maybe the supply side on tobacco products? If we really want to achieve a lot of the goals that we have in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, why not consider the supply side and progressively phase out some of those dangerous products which really do not help humanity? And if they're responsible for 5% of deforestation, for example, we need to make those companies responsible for that, not just having addressed the post-consumption part of it, but having them be responsible for the entire life cycle of the product and for all the harm they cause. And for example, as I said, 5% deforestation, the impact they have on climate change, and so on and so forth. And doing so and accelerating the implementation of the FCTC, the synergy has been mentioned, will have an impact on Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Convention Against Desertification, the upcoming Treaty on Plastics, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and as it was mentioned earlier, also human rights treaties and agreements that most of our countries have agreed to. And I'll stop there for time. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you for introducing some of these ideas as well. It's important that the tobacco industry is held accountable, as many people have mentioned, for the whole life cycle, not just the end product waste, but for all of the damage they're doing to the environment. And Laurent Hubert, who you were just hearing, the Executive Director of Action on Smoking and Health, thank you so much for joining us. I do just want to ask, so in your view, how could we improve on some of these points to ensure that the industry is liable while protecting ourselves from their vested interests, right?
Well, I think the liability point that was mentioned by the previous speaker from corporate accountability is actually critical. That's something that I think we need to do more work on, and something that I think the next conference of the parties could assist with this. I think that would be really a key element. But then also, as countries are implemented environmental, the extended producer responsibility principles at country level, to make sure that they're fully aligned with Article 5.3 of the FCTC, as also Daniel Dorado mentioned earlier, to ensure that the tobacco industry is not present. That's one of the problems, for example, with this, the European Directive on Single-Use Plastic, for example, which calls on countries to involve and engage with the industry. That may be true for other industries, but not for tobacco. The tobacco industry has been, as per the obligations under Article 5.3 of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which calls on countries to not allow for the industry to interfere in public health policy, and also the Global Compact, as you remember that they have excluded the tobacco industry from participating and engaging in the UN Global Compact. And there are reasons for that, and it's because of the negative impact it has on the right to health. And I think it's worth also remembering the Danish Institute for Human Rights a couple of years ago, a quasi-governmental institution, which had entered into a relationship with Philip Morris International. Basically, what they did is what it ended up being a human rights audit of Philip Morris International. And you may remember the conclusion. Basically, the conclusion was that in order to abide by the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, it would require stopping the production and market of tobacco products. So I think from a policy perspective, I know I'm being challenging here, but I really think it's something that would really have benefit society. And if we as a society are not able to address the tobacco issue, given the deforestation problem and so on and so forth, it doesn't really bode well for the future of humanity. If this is, which is really should be a fairly simple problem, if we're not able to address tobacco, then how are we going to be dealing with bigger environmental issues that we're facing today, and in some products that are much more useful than tobacco?
Thank you. And really, really good points. We have a product that's killing 8 million people every year, apart from killing our planet. If we can't deal with this, then exactly as you said, what do we do for the products that actually we are useful? So thank you for bringing that up. And just to your point about banning in countries like New Zealand, Denmark's also considering policies about not selling cigarettes to children born after 2010, I believe. There's many countries. You mentioned a few of the countries leading in these type of policies. It's interesting and provocative what they're doing there.